Look, we all know pollution is a massive problem, right? But how do you actually go about fixing it? Well, today, we're diving into two completely rival economic solutions. One is where the government steps in with a big stick, and the other is where the market, believe it or not, might just fix itself. It's a real showdown of big ideas.
Okay, so let's jump right in with a super simple scenario. You've got a factory, it makes a product we all love, but in the process, it's polluting a river. And now the folks downstream can't swim, they can't fish. So who's on the hook for that? Who should pay? And that one question? It's really the key to everything we're about to unpack. So in the world of economics, this problem has a specific name. It's called a negative externality. Now that sounds fancy, but it just means that a business's activity is creating a cost for somebody else, somebody who had absolutely no say in the deal. The factory gets all the profit, but the community, they're stuck with the polluted river. The price you pay for that product doesn't include the cost of a dead river.
So, how do we fix this kind of imbalance? Well, our first solution comes from an economist named Arthur Pigou. And let's just say it's a classic top-down approach. The idea is that the government needs to step in and do something.
This solution is called a Pigovian tax. And honestly, the idea behind it is so simple, it's brilliant. The government just slaps a tax directly on the harmful activity. You pollute, you pay. It's a straight-up financial penalty for causing damage to society.
Now, the goal here isn't just to punish them. It's about something economists call internalizing the externality. That's just a fancy way of saying you're forcing the company to actually feel the financial pain it's causing everyone else. Suddenly, the cost of that polluted river starts showing up right on the factory's balance sheet.
So let's just trace how this works. The government imposes the tax. All of a sudden, it's more expensive for the factory to operate. So, to protect its profits, the company now has this huge financial incentive to clean up its act. Maybe that means investing in newer, cleaner technology, or just finding a less wasteful way to make their stuff. And look, this isn't just some dusty old theory from a textbook. We see this happening in the real world all the time, with things like carbon taxes. By putting a price on every ton of carbon emissions, governments give companies a powerful reason to lower their carbon footprint and make cleaner energy more attractive. All right, so that's the government fix. But what if we could solve the whole problem without any government getting involved at all? This brings us to a radically different, kind of a bottom-up idea from another economist, Ronald Coase.
Meet the Coase Theorem. The core idea here is that if the conditions are right, the factory and the people downstream could actually just sit down at a table and negotiate a solution themselves. No taxes, no regulators, just a private deal between the people involved.
This quote right here, it gets right to the heart of it. Coase's big idea was that if people can just negotiate freely, with nothing getting in the way, they can solve these big problems on their own. I mean, it's a really optimistic view of what people and private markets can pull off.
But, and this is a really, really big but, this beautiful theory only works if some very specific and, let's be honest, pretty unrealistic conditions are met. First, who owns what has to be crystal clear. Second, it can't cost anything to negotiate the deal. Third, everybody involved needs to know everything. And finally, the whole thing has to be completely voluntary. Yeah, those are some massive hurdles to clear in the real world.
Okay, so let's play this out. In scenario A, imagine the law actually says the factory has the right to pollute the river. If the townspeople can't stand the pollution, they could, in theory, pool their money together and pay the factory to stop. And the factory would say yes, as long as the payment is more than the profit it's making from polluting. All right, now let's flip the script entirely. Imagine it's the townspeople who have the legal right to a clean river. In this case, if the factory wants to pollute, it has to go to the town, negotiate, and pay them for the privilege. And it's only going to do that if the profit from polluting is more than what the town is asking for.
And here is the really mind-bending part of this whole theorem. It doesn't matter who has the rights to begin with. Whether the factory pays the town or the town pays the factory, Coase argued that somehow they'll negotiate their way to the very same efficient solution. The amount of pollution ends up being the same. The only thing that changes is who writes the check. So now we have our two big contenders, the government tax versus the private bargain. These are two totally different philosophies for fixing the exact same problem. So let's put them head to head.
And when you put them next to each other, the difference is just crystal clear. The Pigovian tax is top-down. It's driven by the government, using taxes as its tool. The Coase Theorem is bottom-up, driven by private citizens, using negotiation. It's a genuine clash between central control and free market bargaining.
Okay, so this is all great in theory, right? But, we live in the real world, and the real world is messy. It's complicated, and that's where the clean, simple lines of these economic theories start to get a little bit blurry.
Remember all those perfect conditions the Coase Theorem needed to work? Well, in reality, they kind of get shattered. Transaction costs are never zero. I mean, just imagine the legal fees and the pure chaos of trying to get thousands of different people to agree on one single deal with a giant corporation. It would be a nightmare. And plus, information is never perfect. The company almost always knows way more than the townspeople do.
So this all leaves us with the big lingering question. It's not really about which theory is right or wrong. It's about which tool is right for the job. For a small issue like your neighbor's band practicing way too loud, maybe you can just talk it out and make a deal. But for a massive global problem like climate change affecting billions of people, can we really trust the bargain? Or is a government tax the only tool big enough to even make a dent? And that right there, that's the debate that's still shaping policy all over the world.